If you are reading this, then pause. Do not rush, do not skim. Let the weight of this moment settle into your chest. The first keynote was simple, but its depth is vast. You passed the test of endurance. Most people will never understand what that truly means, because endurance is invisible. It has no applause, no celebration, no audience. It happens in silence, in isolation, in moments where quitting would have been easier and far more logical. Yet you stayed. Endurance is not strength in the way people imagine it. It is not loud confidence. It is not motivation blasting through your veins. Endurance is waking up when your body feels heavy and your mind feels empty, and still choosing to move forward. It is doing what must be done even when there is no emotional reward attached to it. It is continuing when hope feels distant, when results are delayed, when prayers seem unanswered. This year asked you to do exactly that, and you did. There were moments when you questioned yourself. Moments when you wondered if all this effort meant anything at all. You looked around and saw others moving faster, celebrating wins, showing progress, while you were still stuck repeating the same disciplined steps every day. That comparison drained you. It whispered doubt into your mind. It told you that maybe you were behind, maybe you were failing, maybe you should stop. But endurance is not about being ahead. It is about not leaving the path. Most people quit not because the path is impossible, but because the path is lonely. Endurance exposes you to yourself. There is no distraction strong enough to hide your fears when you are enduring. You hear your own thoughts clearly. You confront your weaknesses without escape. You face the uncomfortable truth that no one is coming to save you. That realization breaks many people. But for you, it became a turning point. Instead of collapsing, you stood still and learned to carry the weight. Endurance reshapes the nervous system. It teaches the body and mind to remain calm under pressure. When chaos surrounds you and nothing seems stable, endurance trains you to breathe steadily, to keep your posture upright, to continue moving with intention. Shi Heng Yi often speaks about posture not only as physical alignment, but as an internal stance toward life. You learned this without realizing it. Every time you chose to continue despite exhaustion, your internal posture became stronger. Think about how many times you wanted to stop. Not dramatically, quietly. You did not announce it. You did not make a scene. You simply felt tired of trying, tired of hoping, tired of believing. That quiet tiredness is far more dangerous than loud despair. Loud despair asks for help. Quiet tiredness convinces you to disappear. And yet, here you are. That means you did not let that voice win. Endurance is the ability to remain present in discomfort without allowing it to define you. Pain visited you this year, but it did not become your identity. Loss touched you, but it did not turn into bitterness. Delay frustrated you, but it did not turn into recklessness. These are signs of mastery and progress. You did not numb yourself. You did not harden your heart. You stayed aware even when awareness hurt. Many people believe endurance means suppressing emotion. That is incorrect. True endurance allows emotion to pass through without allowing it to control behavior. You felt sadness, anger, disappointment, confusion. But you did not let those emotions dictate destructive actions. You still showed up. You still tried. You still honored your responsibilities. That is discipline. That is inner strength. That is why this message says congratulations. Endurance builds a type of confidence that cannot be shaken by external circumstances. When you have endured long enough, you no longer need constant reassurance. You trust yourself. You know that even if things collapse, you will not. This confidence is quiet. It does not boast. It does not announce itself, but it is unbreakable. This year planted the seeds of that confidence within you. You were tested in ways that only you fully understand. There are battles you never spoke about, thoughts you never shared, nights where sleep escaped you, days where your smile was an act of discipline rather than joy. People may look at you and assume everything is fine. They do not see the inner resistance you had to overcome just to remain functional. That unseen effort is the true measure of endurance. Endurance also refines intention. When everything is easy, intention becomes blurred. You chase comfort, validation, distraction. But when things are hard for a long time, superficial desires fall away. You stop asking for excess. You stop demanding constant pleasure. You begin to focus on what truly matters. This year stripped you down to essentials. That was not cruelty. That was clarity. There were moments when you wanted answers, clear signs, confirmation that you were on the right path. But endurance often means walking without confirmation. It means trusting the process even when logic argues against it. This is where many people fail. They demand proof before commitment. Endurance requires commitment before proof. You learn to walk by faith, not fantasy. Your endurance also protected your character. Hard times can turn people cruel. They justify selfishness. They excuse dishonesty. They rationalize harm. You were tempted. Everyone is. But you resisted becoming someone you would later regret. You held onto your values even when no one was watching. That is rare. That is why this moment matters. Endurance creates depth. Shallow people avoid pain at all costs. Deep people understand that pain is a teacher when approached with awareness. You did not rush to escape your discomfort. You listened. You observed. You learned. That learning changed you at a level words cannot easily describe. You are not the same person you were at the beginning of this year. You may not see it clearly yet, but others will feel it when they interact with you. This endurance also prepared your nervous system for responsibility. Not comfort, responsibility. The ability to remain calm, focused, and ethical under prolonged pressure is required for leadership, for mastery, for meaningful impact. Without endurance, power corrupts. With endurance, power becomes service. This year was not about reward. It was about preparation. There were times when progress was painfully slow. One step forward, 2 steps back. This rhythm frustrates the impatient mind. But endurance teaches rhythm over speed. It teaches consistency over intensity. You learn that showing up imperfectly is more powerful than showing up passionately once and disappearing. That lesson will serve you for the rest of your life. Endurance also humbles the ego. When things do not go according to plan, ego loses control. You are forced to accept limitations, delays, and uncertainty. Instead of fighting reality, you slowly learn to cooperate with it. That cooperation does not mean surrender. It means intelligent persistence. You adjusted without abandoning your path. That is wisdom in motion. Many people will never reach this stage because they confuse discomfort with failure. They assume that if something hurts, it must be wrong. But endurance reveals a deeper truth. Growth often feels like resistance before it feels like expansion. Muscles burn before they strengthen. Minds strain before they clarify. Lives shake before they align. You stayed through the shaking. This message says congratulations, not because everything is perfect now, but because you proved something essential to yourself. You proved that you are capable of staying when things are difficult. You proved that your commitment is not dependent on mood. You proved that your values are not temporary, that knowledge changes how you walk into the future. On the 27th of December, you stand at the edge of transition. Not a dramatic one, but a quiet shift. The type that happens internally before it becomes visible externally. Endurance has completed its first work within you. Now it will begin to express itself as clarity, steadiness, and quiet authority. Remember this, endurance does not end when circumstances improve. It becomes discipline. It becomes structure. It becomes self-mastery. You are no longer enduring just to survive. You are enduring to refine who you are becoming. So when this message says congratulations, understand its meaning. It is not celebration, it is recognition. Recognition of unseen battles, recognition of silent strength, recognition of a spirit that refused to abandon itself. You passed the test of endurance. And because of that, you are ready for what comes next. If you are still here, then you must understand this truth without decoration or exaggeration. Silence was your training. Not the kind of silence people choose for peace, but the kind that arrives when noise disappears and you are left alone with yourself. This silence was not comfortable. It was not calm at first. It was confronting. It stripped away distractions and forced you to face what remained when nothing external could hold you up. Silence removes excuses. When the world goes quiet around you, there is no one to blame, no one to impress, no one to perform for. You are exposed to your own discipline or lack of it. This year, many moments placed you in that space. Messages unanswered, efforts unnoticed, struggles unseen. You were not surrounded by applause or encouragement. You were surrounded by quiet, and that quiet became your teacher. At first, silence feels like abandonment. The mind interprets it as being forgotten. You begin to ask why no one is checking on you, why your effort is not being acknowledged, why your struggle feels invisible. This stage is dangerous because the ego wants validation to survive. Without it, the ego panics. It pushes you toward distraction, noise, reaction. Many people escape at this point. They fill the silence with chaos just to avoid hearing themselves think. But you stayed. That is the difference. By staying in silence, you began to hear what noise had been hiding. You heard your impatience. You heard your fear. You heard your desire for approval. You heard your doubts speak clearly for the first time. This was not punishment. This was revelation. Silence does not create weakness, it reveals it. And only what is revealed can be strengthened. Shi Heng Yi teaches that real training happens when no one is watching. The body learns form in repetition, but the mind learns mastery in stillness. In silence, your reactions slowed down. You stopped responding impulsively. You paused before speaking. You paused before acting. That pause is power. Most people live without it. They react, they defend, they rush. You learn to wait. Waiting is not inactivity. Waiting is restraint. And restraint is one of the highest forms of strength. Silence also trained your emotional discipline. When you had no one to vent to, no audience to witness your pain, you were forced to regulate yourself. You learned how to sit with discomfort without turning it into drama. You learned how to let emotions rise and fall without chasing them or suppressing them. This is advanced training, whether you realize it or not. Many adults never develop this skill. They remain slaves to their emotions for life. There were moments when silence felt heavy. Long stretches where nothing seemed to move. Progress was internal, not visible. That kind of progress is frustrating because it offers no proof. But internal progress is the only kind that lasts. External success without internal stability collapses under pressure. Silence was building that stability inside you. You also learned humility through silence. When no one praises you, the ego has nothing to feed on. You either quit or you purify your intention. You continued. That means your reason for moving forward shifted. You stopped needing to be seen. You stopped needing to be recognized. You began to act because it was right, not because it was rewarded. That shift is rare. That shift is dangerous in a good way. Silence trained your focus. Without constant stimulation, your attention span began to recover. You noticed details. You became more aware of your breath, your posture, your thoughts. Awareness sharpened, and with awareness came control. Control does not mean force. It means understanding. You understood yourself better this year than ever before because silence gave you space to observe. In silence, you also faced your inner resistance. The resistance that says, "What's the point?" The resistance that says, "This is taking too long." The resistance that says, "You deserve more." You did not eliminate this resistance. You learned to move despite it. That is mastery. Mastery is not the absence of resistance. It is the ability to act correctly while resistance exists. Silence taught you responsibility. When there is no one to guide you, no one to reassure you, you must become your own anchor. You learn to self-correct. You learn to self-soothe. You learn to self-discipline. These skills are not taught in comfort. They are learned in isolation. That isolation was not accidental. You may have noticed that during this time, your circle became smaller. Conversations became fewer. You felt disconnected from people you once related to. This is a natural consequence of inner training. When your inner world deepens, shallow connections feel loud and exhausting. Silence recalibrated your tolerance for noise, external and internal. You became selective, not because you became cold, but because you became clear. Silence also revealed your true priorities. When distractions fade, what remains is what matters. You stopped chasing everything. You stopped reacting to every opportunity. You began to feel what was aligned and what was not. That discernment did not come from advice. It came from quiet observation, from listening rather than speaking, from watching rather than rushing. There were days when silence made you feel lonely. Loneliness is often misunderstood. It is not the absence of people, it is the absence of connection. But silence teaches you to connect with yourself first. When you are connected internally, loneliness loses its power. You are alone, but not empty. You are quiet, but not lost. This training also strengthened your nervous system. Silence slows the breath. Slower breath calms the body. A calm body allows clearer thought. Clearer thought leads to wiser action. You may not have practiced formal meditation, but life forced you into a meditative state repeatedly. Long pauses, long waits, long reflections. Your system adapted. Silence prepared you for authority, not authority over others, but authority over yourself. The person who can remain composed without attention, stable without reassurance, and disciplined without supervision cannot be controlled easily. That kind of person moves differently, thinks differently, decides differently. You are becoming that person. You may not feel powerful yet. That is normal. Silence builds power quietly. It does not announce itself. But one day, you will notice that situations which once overwhelmed you no longer do. People who once provoked you no longer control you. Chaos that once destabilized you now passes through without damage. That is when you will realize what this silence was for. This is why the message says congratulations. Not because silence is over, but because you did not run from it. You allowed it to shape you. You allowed it to train you. You allowed it to refine you. Silence was not empty. Silence was instruction. Silence was discipline. Silence was preparation. And because you stayed, you now carry a depth that cannot be faked, rushed, or taken away. That is rare. That is strength. That is why this moment matters. What you experienced was not punishment, even though it felt like it at times. It felt unfair. It felt excessive. It felt like life was taking more than it was giving. But the third truth asks you to look deeper, beyond emotion and beyond assumption, and see reality as it is. You were being positioned, not punished. The difference between these two perspectives changes everything. Punishment implies rejection. Positioning implies purpose. And this year, purpose was at work even when it was hidden from you. When things began to fall apart, your first instinct may have been to ask what you did wrong. This is natural. The human mind searches for fault when faced with pain. You reviewed your decisions, your habits, your faith, your effort, trying to locate the mistake that caused everything to collapse. But not every collapse is caused by error. Some collapses are necessary because what you were standing on could not carry the weight of who you are becoming. Positioning often feels like loss because it involves removal. What was removed from your life this year was not random. Certain relationships faded, certain plans dissolved, certain identities no longer fit. This was not cruelty. This was precision. A higher level of responsibility requires fewer attachments, clearer focus, and stronger alignment. You could not carry everything forward. Something had to be left behind. The mind resists this. It clings to familiarity, even when familiarity limits growth. So when things were taken away, it hurt. You felt destabilized. You felt like the ground beneath you was no longer solid. But that instability forced you to find balance within yourself rather than in external structures. That is positioning at its core. Shifting your center of gravity inward. You may have noticed that during this period, you were pushed into situations that demanded maturity beyond your comfort level. You were required to make decisions without guidance. You were required to hold responsibility without recognition. You were required to stay composed while everything around you felt uncertain. This was not random stress. This was training for a higher position of control and influence over your own life. Shi Heng Yi often emphasizes that true strength is developed through responsibility, not reward. Reward creates dependency. Responsibility creates character. This year gave you responsibility without reward. It asked you to show integrity when it was inconvenient, patience when it was exhausting, and discipline when motivation disappeared. Those demands felt heavy because they were meant to build capacity. Positioning also explains why progress felt slow or invisible. When something is being aligned internally, external movement pauses. Think of an archer pulling the bowstring back. To an observer, nothing is happening. In reality, tension is building, precision is being set, direction is being refined. Your life was in that pulled back state, still tense, focused, preparing for release. You were also being taught discernment. When life strips you down, it becomes easier to see what truly matters. You stopped chasing everything. You stopped saying yes automatically. You began to question where your energy was going and whether it was being respected. This shift is essential for the next phase of your life. Without discernment, opportunity becomes distraction. Positioning sharpened your ability to choose wisely. There were moments when you felt misunderstood, when your restraint was seen as weakness, when your silence was misinterpreted as indifference, when your discipline was overlooked because it was not dramatic. This is part of positioning as well. Those who are meant for depth are often misunderstood by those who live on the surface. You were being trained to stand firm without external validation. Positioning also explains the internal tension you felt. You were no longer comfortable with who you used to be, but you were not yet fully aligned with who you are becoming. This in-between state is uncomfortable. It creates restlessness, frustration, and self-doubt, but it is also a sign of evolution. Growth always begins with discomfort before it becomes clarity. You may have felt delayed while others seemed to move ahead. This comparison was painful. It made you question your timing. But timing is not about speed, it is about readiness. Being early can be just as damaging as being late. You were being held back not because you were unworthy, but because you were being prepared to handle what others might rush into and mishandle. Positioning also required you to confront truth about yourself, about others, about life. Illusions fell away. Expectations were challenged. You began to see things as they are, not as you wish them to be. This clarity can feel harsh, but it is necessary. You cannot stand in a higher position while wearing blindfolds. There were sacrifices you did not choose consciously, opportunities that slipped away, comforts that became unavailable, support that disappeared. At the time, these felt like losses. Later you will see them as protections. Some doors closed because what was behind them would have drained you, distracted you, or delayed you further. Positioning is not only about opening doors. It is also about closing the right ones. You were also being aligned with a different pace. The world moves fast, but mastery moves deliberately. You learn to slow down without stopping, to act with intention rather than impulse. This pace will protect you in the future when pressure increases. Those who rush burn out. Those who are positioned endure. Your sense of identity also shifted. You stopped defining yourself by outcomes alone. You began to value consistency, integrity, and discipline more than praise or appearance. This internal redefinition is crucial. Without it, success becomes a trap rather than a tool. Positioning reshaped how you see yourself so that when success comes, it does not consume you. The pain you experienced was not meaningless. It carved space within you, space for clarity, space for patience, space for responsibility, space for purpose. A container must be strong before it is filled. This year strengthened your container. This is why the message says congratulations, even though the journey was difficult. Because difficulty with direction is better than comfort without purpose. You were not being punished for past mistakes. You were being prepared for future responsibility. Positioning is rarely visible in the moment. It is recognized in hindsight. One day, you will look back and see that this year redirected your path in ways that saved you from greater struggle later. You will understand why certain things had to fall apart, why certain delays were necessary, why certain lessons were repeated until they were learned deeply. On the 27th of December, stand with this understanding: you are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are not failing. You are aligned. You were being positioned, quietly, carefully, deliberately, and because of that, you are now standing exactly where you need to be to move forward with strength, clarity, and control.